Hello everyone, welcome to today's video. In today's video, we will be discussing about the relationship in classes in Java. So let us begin. So up till now, we have been talking about a lot of classes, objects, different inheritance, okay, and how it is basically done using the keyword extends. Okay, so in today's video we will be basically discussing about the relationship which might exist between classes. Now suppose I have written something like this. So I have a class A and there is another class within the same program which is class B. Okay, so there can be multiple number of classes as already discussed in my previous videos. Okay, so now today's motive or today's objective will be to discuss what type of relations these two classes can have among each other. Okay, so talking about relations, essentially we have already discussed one relation, which is the inheritance relation or is a type of relation. If you need any brush up of or any details of that particular video, you can refer to the to that video and you will find out that what are the different types or how we can actually inherit, or what is a parent class, what is a child class, how the properties are inherited, etc. Okay, however, briefly today we will be discussing the other relations also. All right, so if we want to talk about the types of relations which exist between classes, okay, between classes, so we can categorize them into two main relations. Okay, the first one is a type of a relation, and it is represented or it can be seen in inheritance. All right, the next one is a has a type of a relation, which can be seen in simple associations. Now when we are going by the literal meaning of association, that also means that we can associate one class with the other. Here also association means simply having a type of, or simply having a particular variety of that component. We will further discuss on this so that it becomes easier for us to understand. And again, associations could be further classified into aggregation and composition. Okay, aggregation and composition. Now what are the advantages of having these relations? Otherwise we can simply have different classes and we can go on implementing them one by one. Now they definitely must be having certain advantages based on which we would incorporate a relation, right, or because of which we will be using a relation. So when we are talking about relationships between the classes, the primary advantage in establishing a relationship among different classes is the first one. We have already discussed this: code reusability. So we need not write the same piece of code again and again. We can simply call that particular code by creating an object of the child class and calling a method in the parent class, or simply creating an object, okay, of that particular class and call the method which is there in that class. Now what I mean to say is, suppose I have class A, okay, and class B. So code reusability means, suppose there is a method m1 here. So what I can do is, I can simply extend A and create an object of A and call m1, okay. Or what I can do is, I can not use inheritance and I can simply create, here I can simply create an object of B and call method m1, okay, when I'm using inheritance. Now if I'm not using inheritance, I can simply create an object A and then call the method m1, okay. Now what I am doing is, I am simply making use of a method which is there in a different class apart from the main class. And essentially I do not need to write this method within this particular method in order to access it, or repeatedly I do not have to go on repeating this particular code block of code again and again. Okay, so this is what is code reusability all about. We can simply make use of the same code which is there and call it using an object of that class or an object of the child class which has been created. Then number 2 is cost cutting. Now let me give you a very real-time example using cost cutting. Suppose if your phone battery drains out, what do? We recharge it again and then we go on using it. Similarly, if the if our phone, suppose we use a prepaid SIM card and the call balance in that SIM card gets exhausted, do we throw away that SIM card? No, right? We use the same SIM card and we use recharge, or we will use a different plan, or we will go on refilling that particular plan again so that our call facilities are restored. And similarly, when our phone battery drains out, we do not need to throw away that phone. We can simply charge it and use it again. So it does not incorporate any additional cost, right? We can make use of the same product but with the minimum cost involved, because definitely recharging your phone or getting your battery charged, okay, they definitely involve some sort of cost, but it is not as expensive as buying a new phone or buying a new SIM card. Okay, so the cost cutting is also introduced. And number 3 is reduce redundancy. So redundancy means you are repeatedly using the same thing over and over again. Okay, so reducing redundancy means you do not need to use it again and again, right? So as already mentioned that in class A, whatever is there within class A, we do not need to write this particular method in class B again. Okay, class B again, we do not have to incorporate this method or write this method again. So this means what? If we are writing the method again and again, it has multiple copies of that same method or same codes. So we will create a redundant situation. So we do not need to create this redundant situation if we are going for establishment of relation which is between classes. Okay, so now let me talk about each of the relationships in detail. So the first type of relationship that we discussed about was inheritance. Inheritance. So inheritance essentially is a type of is a relationship. Okay, talking about is a relationship, when we are doing this, you have to understand that it is like considering a type of, okay, is a type of, like a car is a vehicle. Okay, surgeon is a doctor. Okay, so then again you can consider that let's say what else is a, so let's say cat is a or an animal. Okay, don't go by the grammatical words or the grammatical corrections, just consider the relationship. So this is a relationship. Okay, so here what happens is that this we are considering as the parent class, okay, and this we are considering as the child class. And what happens here is the parent class or the parent properties would be inherited by the child properties. And how do we actually go about implementing this? With the help of inheritance. So as already mentioned, suppose I have class A, okay, and I have a method, let's say m1. Okay, so I'll write one properly, void m1. Okay, and within this maybe I have some other blocks of code, and then class B extends A. Okay, so here I will write down the main method, public static void main and string args, and after that what I'll do is I'll simply create an object of B. Okay, so class, oh sorry, not class. So what I'll do is I'll simply create an object. So before that, you also have to understand that we can use a new keyword in order to create an object. Okay, so we have already done this, right? So we do not have to bother much about it. So what I'll do is I'll not write the entire piece of code here because it will not fit in the screen. So what I'll do is I'll simply create an object here. Okay, create an object of B. Okay, I'm not writing the code here because it will make you remember things better if I'm writing the exact word. Create an object of B. Okay, so once this object is created, let's say this object is equivalent to B. So using B, you can use B to call M1. Okay, the method M1. So using B, I can access the method which is there in some other class. Why I am able to do this? Because class B has already extended A. Okay, when it is already extended A, that means the properties of A has been transmitted to B, and I can call the method which is in A to and get it accessed. Okay, so this is a type of, or this is a type of relationship, right? So this we have actually done, so we do not have to worry much about it. So if you want any further reference to inheritance, you can simply go back to the other video. Okay, so here creating an object of B, let me write down the code also for you here. So it is like B is equal to new B. Okay, so B is equal to new B. So what is there? I'm creating this object, and using this B, I'm trying to call M1. Okay, so this is how you will be trying to access the method which is present in A with an object which is present, which you have created for the child class, and this is essentially a type of a relationship. Is A. Okay, now we will go ahead with the next relationship, which is has A type of a relationship, or it is also known as association, simple association. All right, so let's talk about association. And association is essentially a has A type of relation. Okay, so when we are talking about association, so whenever we create a class, let's say class employee. So whenever we are creating a class, within here, if we are initializing any instance variable, okay, let's say we have string name and integer employee ID. Okay, so let me consider just this particular representation. So what does this employee have? Employee has a name, and employee has an employee ID, right? So that means if I want to put this in plain English, it should represent something like this: employee has a name and employee has a employee ID. Okay, has an employee ID, or as already mentioned, let us not go into the grammatical representation. We will simply stick to the relation. So when you are looking at this, you will see that the employee has a relationship, right? So this is how your has a type of relationship basically works. Okay, so here what if you are want to write it from program point of view, you do not need to use the extend keyword. Suppose I have class, I'll use the same example, employee. Okay, and within this you have some method, okay, m1, let's say m1 we have here. Then I am writing another class which is class, let's say ram. Okay, extends employee. So when I'm doing this, what happens is all the properties of employee will get inside ram. So in has a type of relationship, however, we do not need to use this extends. Okay, we do not need to consider this particular inheritance principle in your has a type of relation. Okay, now how do I actually access the method which is present in employee through ram? So what I'll do is, this is simple, the previous concept which we have already done. I will create an object, okay, employee, let's say e1 is equal to new employee, and simply use e1 dot m1. Okay, so using this particular simple logic, I can call any method which is present in any class. That means I have to create an object of that particular class, right? Now why do we do not encourage inheritance in this association type of relation? Why this is the scenario? Because if we look at the previous one, okay, which is a type of relationship. So here what happens, as soon as I extend the properties of A into B, I am getting dependent on A. That means my program becomes tightly coupled. So B and A, they become tightly coupled. This is a disadvantage of inheritance. That means if any changes is made to class A, definitely that impact will also be seen in class B. Okay, now we suppose when we are doing big programs or when we have huge projects, we cannot afford to do so. All right, we simply cannot afford to do so, because any changes in any of the class might affect the subsequent classes respectively. So I need to find a way out in which we do not need to use inheritance to that extent where it makes my program completely tightly coupled and the changes could be reflected in one or the other program. It serves as an advantage also. However, for huge programs that I'm talking about, it serves as a major disadvantage. Okay, so that is why we can use this association concept, so that each of the classes, they remain independent. However, we can refer to the methods or the properties or objects of that particular class by some other class. Okay, and as long as the methods there are public. Okay, so this is how your has a type of relationship works. Has a is basically association, and it is widely promoted because it do not have any tightly coupled nature between the different classes. We simply create objects of the respective class that we want to access properties, methods or objects from, and then we can simply access it. So this is association. Now talking about association, as already mentioned, if I'm talking about association, so association has two other type of relationship. One is aggregation. So this is, let's say, association. So one is aggregation, and the other one is composition. Talking about aggregation, so this is basically a weak type of relationship. However, weak has a type of relationship. Composition, however, is a very, very strong has a relationship. Now let me show you with a real-time example. suppose I have a hospital. Okay, suppose I have a hospital. Now hospital will have doctors. Okay, sorry, yes, hospitals will have doctors, and hospitals will also have various departments, right? So like orthopedics, gynecology, medicine, etc. So now look into these two type of components which are present inside hospital. Now hospital has doctors or has a doctor, and hospital has a department. Now which one is a weak relation here? Now let us consider the hospital and doctors first. Okay, now if my doctor does not exist, will the hospital exist? Yes, it will. Okay, or let's say if my hospital does not exist, will my doctors exist independently? Yes, because we see a lot of doctors who have their own chambers or who can practice on their own as well, without working under any department, okay, or without working under any hospitals, right? However, if we are considering this department, without the departments, the hospital will not be impacted. I mean, without the departments, the hospital will not run, right? Suppose we in a hospital we do not have any departments. So will that be called as a hospital? No, right? And without a hospital, these departments cannot exist, right? So any changes made to the hospital will also impact the department, and without this particular department, the hospital will be impacted. So that means this is a strong type of has a relationship, and this is a weak type of has a relationship. Another possible example you can take is with a, let's say, car. So for a car, I have a seat cover, not seat cover, let's say I have a music player, I have a player, okay, and music player, and I also have an engine. Now which is a strong bond and which is a weak bond? So without my music player, the car will still work fine, but without the engine, the car will not work, right? So this is a strong type of relation, and this is a weak type of relation. So we have to understand that what are the things that we can consider for a particular class or for a particular category, so that it is not impacted much, and it also serves the purpose of reusability and the other advantages that we have talked about. Okay, so talking about this aggregation and composition, this weak relationship basically refers to the aggregation, and the strong relationships, they refer to the composition. They somewhat share like an architecture, something like this. Okay, so suppose as already mentioned, suppose I have a hospital. So hospital is the outer circle, and this is known as the container object. Container object. So container object, and inside it is known as the contained object. Contained object. Now when we are talking about the container object and the contained object, so hospital, let us consider the doctors as the contained object. So what happens is, even if the contained object is not there, the container object will be there. Okay, it will be always there. Now let us look at the other part, which is the department, right? So departments, so if the container object is not there, if the contained object is not there, the container object also will not be there. So this is basically a strong type of relation, or the composition relation, right? So you have to understand that there are two types of relationship among the has a type of relationship, and that is your aggregation and composition. And this aggregation and composition, they are independent, because has a itself is independent, it is not tightly coupled, they are independent of each other, but definitely the has a property or the relationship between them, that will be impacted. Okay, and when we are talking about this, let's say, let me go back to the previous diagram. Yes, so when we are talking about inheritance, it is implemented generally using the extends keyword, and associations we use simply reference variables in order to do it. Okay, inheritance is always tightly coupled, or is a relation is always tightly coupled. However, your has a type of relationship is always loosely coupled, or sometimes they are independent. You just need to create a method out of it. Okay, so now talking about a simple example, let's see a simple example. So suppose I have a vehicle class. Okay, I have a vehicle class, so there I will be incorporating is a relationship, is a relationship. So here car is a type of a vehicle, as well as truck is a type of a vehicle. And now this car will have a music player, and it will also have an engine. Okay, so this is a has a type of relationship, and this is also a has a type of relationship, right? So when you're looking at this diagram, this is a relationship is always having a bottom up approach. Okay, from bottom to top. So this is the flow, control flow, and the has a is always from top to bottom. It's like car has a music player, car has an engine. So car is a type of vehicle, truck is a type of vehicle. So it is just the arrows are just reflecting or representing the manner in which the various things are accessed. Okay, similarly you can take the other such example. One of the other such example is, let's say, university is there. Okay, we have a university. So university definitely has let's say ADBU is a type of university. Okay, and we also have Royal Global University. Okay, so it is a ADBU is a type of university, and RGU is also a type of university. Now ADBU has professors, and ADBU also has departments. Okay, so these are has a relationship or association relationship. So the arrows will just move from top to bottom to top. Okay, so this is how your relationship between the class is getting executed. All right, so this is simple is a relationship, and this is your has a relationship. However, it is always recommended that we go ahead with using more of has a relationship than is a relationship, because is a is tightly coupled, and any impact in the parent class will definitely impact the child class. However, here since we are simply using a reference variable, so we can make use of that reference variable in order to access any methods. So this is why association is always preferred more than inheritance. Okay, so I believe this much is clear. We will discuss further on this topics in my next video. So that is all for today. Thank you.